Hey everyone. I wanted to make this video a couple months ago, but I kept stopping myself because I felt like I was in the middle of learning something new. Even now, I still feel a little inadequate to teach, but I decided to just try to make this video anyways, and then maybe this can be an ongoing annual project or something like that I keep on updating as I learn more about shooting. Now, before we begin, I want to give a bit of my credentials. So, I've been playing basketball for a little over a year now, and at this point in game, I'd guess that I'm making about 25% of my jump shots, and then in practice, maybe closer to 35%. But the point is that I'm not good at shooting, I'm not good at basketball. There isn't really much reason for you to trust me to teach you how to play basketball. And you might even already be thinking, who is this guy trying to teach basketball and why is he trying to teach from his closet? Uh, so yeah, there isn't much reason. But on the other hand, maybe a fresh perspective, a perspective coming from someone new to basketball, is something that could be really helpful. And I have consumed a lot of basketball content in the past year of playing, and it's my personal opinion that uh, good content on how to shoot a basketball is a little scarce online. If you look up shooting tutorials, I think you'll find that your results are diluted with clickbait titles like How to Shoot Like Curry or Apply these 3 tricks to improve your shooting by 10% instantly. And then a lot of these videos are really more like shooting tips or small adjustments you can make to your shooting form. But there aren't many videos that give clear, concise instruction on how to shoot a basketball. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. And again, these are just my opinions, so you can just treat this video as maybe how I would teach myself if I were to learn basketball again for the first time. Okay, let's get into this. So I want to start with what I want to call shooting principles. Something I've often heard going through different tutorials online is this idea that all great shooters shoot differently. So getting good at shooting is really more about owning your own form. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with this sentiment, but I do think it's a little misleading. For example, some people say that Steph Curry and Ray Allen have pretty different shooting forms, but I bet if you show 2 clips of them shooting next to each other to some random people, most people will say that it actually looks pretty similar. So, yeah, all great shooters shoot differently, but I think there are some fundamental principles that they all generally try to follow. And then there's some variation along the way in their preferences. Now, as I go through these principles, as well as my philosophy on shooting, you're going to find that some of these principles will conflict with each other. And that's where the variance happens. So it'll be up to you to decide what technique is most fit for you. All right. So, what are these principles that I came up with? The first one is to increase power. And there's probably a better name for this, maybe something to do with power transfer. But the idea is that when you tense your muscles, it's really hard to be consistent and accurate. So shooting 3 pointers takes a lot of strength, right? But if you add a motion like jumping when you shoot, that's going to reduce your arm strength that you need to get to the ball to reach the basket, and therefore helping your consistency. The second principle is to minimize variables. And you might already be able to tell that this is going to conflict with the first principle sometimes. But basically, the idea is that if you simplify the number of motions that you're making, then it'll be easier to be consistent with your technique. The third principle is to have straight alignment. And what that means is that when you release the basketball, you want the ball to come off your hand straight and align with the basket. Now, I want to add that this alignment is most important for your release, but some people will say that your entire shot needs to be straight, starting from the ground, going all the way up. And that certainly can help, but in my opinion, all that matters is whether your release is straight. Finally, the last principle is to be comfortable. If some form doesn't feel natural to you, then maybe it's not in your best interest to force yourself to shoot that way. But again, sometimes you'll need to weigh that against the other principles, and then you'll decide for yourself what's the best way to shoot. All right, let's actually talk about how to shoot now. So when I teach, I like to teach in poses, and there are 3 poses you want to hit in a jump shot. The first one is called the dip. In the dip, I keep the ball at my waist, slightly misaligned to my right, and my knees bent, getting ready to jump. As for my stance, I like to keep my right foot a couple inches in front of my left. And for me personally, I like to have a bit of a tilt because that's what's comfortable for me. And I also think it helps with the alignment when I go into my release. As for my hands, I keep my right hand behind the ball with my wrist bent, elbow tucked in, and my left hand is pinning the ball to my right hand, holding it on the side with my fingers reaching over the top. Now, this is just my own personal recommendation because I think all this generally helps with having straight alignment going into your release. But if you find something is more natural, such as keeping your elbow sticking out a little, or maybe your right hand is on the side of the ball, I have no issue with that. And I'm sure you can find some successful NBA shooters who shoot like that as well. The second pose is the set point. This is the pose right before your right arm starts straightening out going into your release. So in the set point, your legs and your hips are beginning to straighten out, and then your right arm and wrist are still bent with your left hand about to come off the ball to go into your release. Now, as for how high the ball actually is in your set point, that's kind of up to you, but something to consider is that the lower you have your set point, the more power you're gonna have going into your release. So for me, I'm generally pretty weak, so I like to have the bottom of the ball somewhere around my mouth. But if you're stronger, you could even have the ball above your head, and that'll make it harder for you to get blocked. The third pose is the release. So in this pose, your body is fully in the air, totally straightened out, and your left hand is off the ball, and your right arm is fully extended diagonally above your head with your wrist snapped. Now, something I personally recommend is that when you release the ball, you want to do that as you are rising up in the air, because that will help lift the ball and once again help you with power. But if you don't need that extra help, then there are plenty of successful shooters that shoot at either the apex of their jump or even as they are beginning to start descending in their jump. Now I have one final recommendation as you try to put these three poses together, and that's to try to have a one motion shot. What that means is that as you go through these three poses, you want to try to make the transition as smooth as possible, having no pause at your set point. This will allow for a good power transfer starting from your dip going all the way into your release. Now for some closing thoughts. First of all, I should note that I intentionally left out some instruction on certain details of the jump shot. The reason for this is that I think shooting is really complex, and sometimes with complex motions, I think it's better to give less instruction so that you aren't thinking about so many things when you're practicing. But in case you're interested, I'll put some things on the screen that I think might be worth considering. Second, I think the best way to learn how to shoot is to experience it. So, everything in this video is only meant to be an aid for you to actually go out and experience what good shooting form feels like. Lastly, I think becoming a consistent shooter is really hard. I used to think that basketball didn't come naturally to me, but recently I've been feeling like I'm probably about average. I've talked to a few people whom I regard as good shooters, and I've since then concluded that to become a knockdown shooter, you really have to be taking hundreds of shots every day to get there. So remember to practice hard, guys, and it's going to take some time as well. Thanks for sticking till the end. Here's a few clips of myself shooting in case you need a visual example. And of course, for your reward, there's a baby video at the end of the video. Catch you in the next one. Ash, can you show me darkness? Darkness.
go.